back in Detroit, if there's an opportunity at Specs, it seems like a no-brainer for you. What was
Yeah,
that like?
so I had to leave Radio X because it was a privately owned station at the time. I don't remember his last name now, but his first name was Don. He owned our little rinky-dink radio station as well as greenhouses in Royal Oak.
Right.
So he had his hands in a few things. And all I wanted was health insurance. I had been working there 2 years.
Gotta have
I
the
needed
insurance.
health insurance. I kept enrolling and dropping out of U of M Flint so that I could,
Really?
my parents could present the letter that I was enrolled in
Oh, my.
school. And so they were catching on to that. My mom's like, you gotta come up with a plan here. But I couldn't afford to go to school and do radio. So I was really in this catch-22. And so I had kept a close relationship with Donald Walker, who was the director of education at the time. And just as an instructor, when I had him at Specs, I just really admired him and looked up to him. Just, you can't possibly be in a bad mood around Donald Walker.
Love Donald Walker. Another
Yeah.
great man. Yeah.
And so I kept contact with him and I just said, Donald, I need a pep talk. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I can't live on just radio 2 days a week. I knew I could move back home, but I was just looking for that guidance for that next step. And he goes, actually, I have a part-time thing here at the school, a lab assistant position where basically I would walk around to those practice radio studios that they had at Specs that were like little mock radio stations to get the kids the practice of running a board and executing a show. And there were reel-to-reel machines in there at the time and carts. And he said, we could use someone to just kind of, for lack of better terms, babysit, and assist if a student doesn't know why their reel-to-reel isn't playing back audio. And a lot of times it was walking into a studio and flipping a switch on the board that they hadn't had in the right place. He goes, it's not full time, but it's about 25 hours a week. Cool. Awesome. So I was doing that. And then that's when I met you because you were attending as a student. So I was doing that during the week and then doing radio on the weekend. So I packed up my stuff and left Randy, which she was heartbroken.
You can't go. All the plants are going to die.
I know, right? Exactly. And lived back at my mom and dad's house, which was a hard pill to swallow, but whatever.
Now, you worked at several radio stations, and we're going to get to those when you came back to Detroit, because I don't think you ever left, and you can correct me when I'm wrong when we get to that. But you did spend, I think, 15 years at Specs Howard School of Broadcast Arts. Mm-hmm. As, I met you as a student in 2000. We worked together in the mid-2000s when I came back to work there for a couple of years. But your job evolved through that institution over the years. Could you talk about that? Because 15 years is a long time to be at that school. Anyway,
yeah. Specs will always have a special place in my heart. I did start as a lab assistant, and then a position opened up to be an instructor at Specs. And I say instructor because it's not a teacher. Teachers go to school to teach. Instructors share their craft and their knowledge of the industry, which I really didn't have much at that point, obviously, but I knew enough to teach other people. This is what I dealt with in an entry-level position, and I was pretty good at editing. I don't know if I still am. I don't really have to edit all too often anymore, but
it's like riding
at the time,
yeah.
So I knew enough to be of use to the students, and so they put you through this crash course on how to teach, essentially. Right. I did that, and I did that for probably about a year and a half. And as I had mentioned, I was at 106.7 and they were looking for a night person, but it was not a full-time position. Even though it was a full-time air shift, it wasn't going to pay the bills full-time. So I needed something that allowed me, I'm not turning that opportunity down. There's no way. No. I'm just not turning that down. So I needed something that allowed me to work during the day and do that at night. And so as an instructor, because they had offered classes morning, afternoon, and evenings, you had to be available essentially all times of the day throughout the week at certain points, right? And so admissions there is more of a 9 to 5 type position. And so,
Yeah, I think that's what you were doing when I came back to teach. I think that's what you were doing when I
yeah,
came back to
probably.
teach.
I spent the majority of my time at Specs in the admissions department. And it started as doing like recruiting for the local high schools, the gimmies, what is that? Warren Tower, or not Warren Tower, Warren Cousino.
Southfield. Oh, Warren Cousino,
Southfield High
Southfield School.
School. What is that? Monroe. They have the radio station. And Plymouth Salem. I don't know if they still
Yeah.
do or not. But going to those stations and even some out in the Lapeer area that they had great like VOTEC schools and programs and just recruiting where it could be a 9 to 5. I'm on the road all day, but it's a 9 to 5 essentially. So I did that for a while. And that once 106.7 flipped to country, that position was eliminated. They went automated for a while. And so I found myself at Specs and I was like, okay, I feel like I'm going to be here for a hot minute.
Sure.
So I need to make sure that this position is something. I want to make it my own. So I expanded the high school program greatly. I made it so that the high school person kind of worked hand in hand with the career services person so that we could tag team the entire state of Michigan, because what a better way to use your resources than go to these high schools that are in Traverse City where these kids could come down to Specs for 8 months and then go live back at home with mom and dad, which made sense, and work at a radio station
Right.
that made sense for their entry level skills.
Right.
Bring the career services person with me. They could go and talk to the radio stations and, butter them up while I'm talking to the schools. So I kind of made this dual program and did that for quite some time.
Now, while you were there, we brought him up earlier in the conversation. You got to work 15 years with one of my what I think is one of the great men that I've ever had in my life, and that's Dick Kernan. What was that like to get to know that guy?
It was incredible. I mean, Dick, you just appreciated his honesty. One of the things that I'll never forget he told me was, I was only 18, 19 when I was trying to get my first job. And I had interviewed at a few different stations. And I know I didn't get it because, I could talk a good game. But when they found out how old I was, that was a problem. Even I didn't care. I was even trying for promotions, working in promotions, but I wasn't 21. And so that was a problem for me to get into bars. Like specifically, I remember interviewing at 89X. And that was a big issue. They were like, that's great for the bars in Canada. You're 19. That's going to be a problem here. And even some of the on-air gigs that I was applying for. And Dick was like, don't paint the town red with your age. You come off much more mature. Unless they ask, don't, And so that was, Carl Coffey did not know until we did a promotion with the Motor City Casino that I was not 21. We took a busload of listeners when Motor City Casino had first opened, and it was supposed to be him and I. Well, obviously, there's no getting around that one.
Right.
And I tried making up excuses because they didn't even want me to tell Carl Coffey how young I was. They were afraid he wouldn't want to work with me or something. So Carl, he thought I was in my 20s or something.
But eventually, I mean, you spent 15 years there. You got old enough. You became 21 and then some.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm 35 now. So no, yeah. I mean, it's it was a young. I got into it very young, but Dick Kernan along the way always gave me really great advice and gave me the, hey, I think it's time you move on from this. Even at Specs, he's like, how long are you going to go driving around talking to high schools? It's time for something new.